Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Hello there, you little demons. Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Choose Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the Crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you. Yes, you, the person who had a pretty wholesome event happen to them last week. You see, my mum came up all the way from Devon and we celebrated the fact that she's turned 70 recently, and we went to Skomer Island. It is an island that once a year gets an inundated amount of puffins. You know, those tiny little birds that have amazingly colourful beaks? It is amazing, and there was a record 42,000 of them around this island. So we went on a little boat trip around there, and it was so wholesome and amazing. And yet, that's not the twist of this story, because I met a new character that may or may not appear in the show from time to time. And it was actually the cousin of Big Pidge. What up, mate? You didn't tell me about this, but I met a seagull called Gully, Gilly and Gully. We started up a little tag team over there. We wrestled our way through Skomer Island, took home the Puffin World Championship belt. It was pretty easy, seeing as the puffins are about the size of a water bottle, but still, I held my head up high and so did Gully. So occasionally, they might pop in from time to time. Anyway, yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week, and this week we have none other to thank than Dean Nelson for their suggestions of video games that were so bad, so utterly heinous and stanky, that they actually killed the studio. Ooh, rough times. Now, don't get me wrong, friends, we've all made mistakes in the past. We are human after all, but unfortunately for the games that we're talking about today, they just did not hit the mark. And because whether they invested too much time, money, or everything in between, ended up closing the doors on the studios as a result. It is a sad topic, but we're going to try and have some fun anyway, because I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games so bad, they killed the studio.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Well, you can. Right now, you can get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. And all you've got to do is click the link in the description below or on this QR code that should be right down here in this video to get signed up with this great deal right now.
Number 8, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 was sold as a major comeback for the legendary, much-loved skating franchise, but anyone who was paying attention to the game's marketing knew that it was really just a rushed attempt by Activision to milk the Tony Hawk licensing agreement one more time before it ran out. Can you milk a pigeon? I ain't gonna find out. Despite the polish and finesse of the earlier games in the franchise, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, or Turbo Skater 5, was panned by critics and players alike for its buggy gameplay, its poor controls, its dated graphics, its just general lack of content and forgettable levels. It was later revealed that the game was indeed developed in just a few short months to release before the Tony Hawk licensing deal expired. Its commercial failure ultimately led to the closure of developer Robomodo, who previously made Tony Hawk spin-off games Ride and Shred and went out of business less than a year after the release of Turbo Skater 5. But thankfully, Activision seems to be putting considerably more respect on the Tony Hawk brand these days. Fingers crossed it continues on to a bright, skate, shred-filled future. Number 7, Drawn to Death. Now, Drawn to Death was an online multiplayer shooter developed by the original creator of God of War, and it was the first project from their new studio, the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency. Yep, that's a name. That is a name. As an arena shooter set within the pages of a teenager's notebook, it rocked a visual style that at least definitely set it apart from other similar titles. But there is no getting about it. Drawn to Death is one of the most garish, eyesore-inducing video games ever made. It's got a deeply unappealing aesthetic that was made even more intolerable by the game's insufferable, edgy, too cool for school vibe. It kind of gave off this impression of, you know, that Steve Buscemi thing from 30 Rock where he's just like, "What up, my fellow kids?" It was very much like that. It was just like, why are you trying so hard, dude? Chill out, dude. Plus, and let's just not beat around the bush here, it wasn't that much fun to play, because even if you strip away its divisive style, at its core it was just basically another generic, uninteresting shooter. And according to the developers themselves, Drawn to Death was inexplicably produced for an obscene $12 million! So it wasn't even remotely surprising that the game was a sales bust. This resulted in the cancellation of their next game and the closure of the studio less than a year after Drawn to Death's release. It was a very impressive attempt, but ooh, $12 million price tag. That is gonna sting. Number 6, Haze. 2008's PS3 exclusive shooter Haze faced quite the uphill struggle from the get-go, because despite being a new FPS from the much-loved Timesplitters developer Free Radical Design, the game's media unrealistically hyped it up as a Halo killer. Now, you should never do that, kids. You should never do that. Keep the words Halo killer out of your mouth. Well, actually, maybe bring them back in now, because Halo's kind of limping on at the moment. So maybe it's more of like a Halo killer in the sense of like, hey, yo, we're changing the game, we're doing things better than this titan of the industry, and more just like, we're just going to put it out of its misery right now. We're going to take it around the back of the shed. Any last words? What's that? You've got more content planned, but the roadmap is... No. So Haze was saddled with woefully unfair expectations right out of the gate, and when people played it, they just found it to be boring. I mean, it was far from the personality of Free Radical's prior titles, so it was just a dull, generic shooter with poor controls, pretty unimaginative level design, and terrible AI, by the way, people forget about that, and it had a lackluster multiplayer, which all combined to make not a Halo killer? The inverse, in fact. Halo has killed us. As a result, Haze was a commercial flop, and this, combined with the cancellation of Star Wars Battlefront 3, sad noise, which Free Radical was working on for several years at the time, caused the studio to enter bankruptcy. By December 2008, barely 6 months after Haze's release, Free Radical was shut down. And a few months later, the shell of Free Radical was purchased by Crytek and transformed into Crytek UK, which then primarily worked on the Crysis franchise before itself being shuttered in 2014. Now, though Embracer Group did resurrect Free Radical in 2021 to work on a new Timesplitters game, the company was then shut down once again at the end of 2023 without releasing anything new. That is a string of bad luck and then some. Woof. Number 5, Radical Heights. After the commercial underperformance of the pretty decent multiplayer shooter Lawbreakers, Gears of War creator Cliff Bleszinski and his studio Boss Key Productions swiftly announced Radical Heights, a battle royale game which released in early access just 8 months after Lawbreakers dropped. It was painfully apparent to anyone who played the game or even watched but a little footage that Radical Heights had been hastily pushed out in an attempt to cash in on the then red-hot battle royale trend that was led by PUBG and the likes of Fortnite. The game felt fundamentally unfinished, both in terms of its janky mechanics and flat, unappealing visuals, and so it unsurprisingly died on the vine, its player count falling off a cliff Bleszinski within a matter of weeks. On May the 14th, 2018, barely a month after Radical Heights launched, Bleszinski announced that the back-to-back failures of Lawbreakers and Radical Heights had caused the closure of Boss Key. Now, it goes to show that not even the greats, the luminaries behind a franchise as big as Gears of War, knock it out of the park every single time. It's like me and Big Pitch. Every single time that we sit down, we just think that we've got like an absolute grade A bangers and mash situation on our hands. Sometimes somebody will enter the room and be like, hey, yo, maybe you shouldn't release a kite that electrocutes people. It was in poor taste to call it the Ben Franklin to begin with, lads. I don't even know why you think that the kite market is so lucrative. We've been over this many times. We just need to work out a few kinks, all right? You've got an e-bike, why can't you have an e-kite? Number 4, SimCity 2013. SimCity, I wanna sim my city, SimCity. Gosh, can you imagine if that was the trailer song? Build a house, build a fence, extrapolate, now do it again. Build a community, build a school, build a mansion, with a swimming pool. SimCity, SimCity. Living a life, a boring life. SimCity, SimCity. Wasting your time, planning traffic routes. Right, Now, 2013 SimCity Reboot is far and away the best game on this list because the core gameplay is actually enjoyable to a point. But the problem, however, is that any of the city builder's positives were wholly overshadowed by its utterly disastrous launch. SimCity 2013 had technical issues out of the wazoo from day one, and that was largely related to EA's decision to make the game always online, leaving most paying customers unable to play it amid network outages. And even when they could play it, they risked losing their progress altogether. Yeah, that's right. I remember hearing reports about it the other day. People were trying to save their cities, and it was just like, yeah, I've saved it, mate. I've not bloody saved it. It's absolute mugs. Just spent 8 hours just building this absolute utopia over here. Yeah, I've saved it, mate. Don't worry about it. Click the save button again. Go on, I'm sure it'll make a difference. And EA only made things worse for themselves by both refusing to offer refunds to disgruntled players and discounting the prospect of making the game playable offline at any point. The negativity surrounding the launch caused SimCity to post pretty disappointing sales, which not only resulted in the series being put on ice, but developer Maxis Emeryville closing down in 2015. But something good did come from SimCity's failure though. It actually prompted EA to pivot away from always online games, with The Sims 4 being reworked from an online-only title into a purely offline experience. It's just a shame that it had to cost quite a few people their jobs. Number 3, Medal of Honor Warfighter. To date, 2012's Medal of Honor Warfighter was the last mainline entry into the classic FPS franchise, as long as you ignore that 2020's VR spin-off Above and Beyond, which we are, and was developed by Danger Close Games, who under several names had worked on the series since its inception in 1999. However, the franchise began to seriously struggle around the late 2000s as Call of Duty and Battlefield surged in popularity, and Medal of Honor just simply failed to differentiate itself. But Warfighter was rather dubiously mounted as a direct follow-up to the 2010's middling series reboot, though received considerably worse reviews, with its generic campaign, bevy of technical issues, and unremarkable multiplayer suite all being widely criticised. More to the point, Warfighter brutally underperformed at retail, prompting EA to put the series on hold while citing both the poor critical and commercial response. And as for Danger Close, well, I'll give you a clue, it's on this list, so what do you think? Yeah, I mean, it worked primarily on Medal of Honor, and it led them to them being dissolved. I mean, some of the employees did go on to work at DICE LA to go and work on the Battlefield franchise instead, so they kind of gave their competition more ammo, because I'm pretty sure around that time Battlefield was on the up. So yeah, not a smart move. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings Gollum. The Lord of the Rings Gollum is one of the most atrocious licensed video games of the last decade, if not ever. It was painfully clear that developer Daedalic Entertainment, best known for their acclaimed adventure games like Deponia and The Night of the Rabbit, had bitten off way more than they could supposedly chew with this AAA stealth action absolute dishwater of a game. Gollum was near universally panned for its dated, frustrating gameplay, overabundance of glitches, hilariously naff graphics, and almost every other aspect of its production. Reports soon enough emerged that the employees of the developers had actually been subjected to poor working conditions throughout development, and to make matters worse, an apology for the launch date of the game was later revealed to have been written by ChatGPT. Gollum unsurprisingly sold poorly, leading to the cancellation of a planned sequel and causing Daedalic to shutter as a developer, returning to a publisher-only business model barely a month after the game's release. And number 1, APB All Points Bulletin. APB All Points Bulletin is an open-world multiplayer shooter initially developed by Real Time World and released in 2010, though reviews immediately skewed from mixed to negative. Janky gameplay, repetitive missions, and grindy progression did not win APB many or any fans, and the decision to set the game's review embargo an entire week after the release of the game, making it clear that the developer was trying to hide how desperately poor the launch was going. Given that Real Time World spent 5 years developing APB to the eye-watering tune of $100 million, they clearly expected it to become a multiplayer live service mainstay, but instead it flopped hard. In August 2010, barely 6 weeks after the game launched, the studio entered administration, and by the next month, Real Time Worlds had been closed down along with APB itself. But in a rather unexpected twist though, APB was purchased by publisher K2 Network just 2 months later, and by the end of 2011 the game was relaunched as a free-to-play title called APB Reloaded, as developed by Reloaded Productions. And somewhat impressively, this resurrected iteration of the game still regularly hosts upwards of 500 concurrent players on Steam almost 15 years after the relaunch. Now I know that some of you might be scoffing like, oh, 500 players, so that's not very much, mate. It's not like, gotta remember, that's really impressive for a game that nobody's talking about, let alone thinking about. So yeah, good on them. Huzzah and all that. Go check it out for yourself. You might like it. It might be your next favourite game. Then who's laughing, mate? You've laughed at yourself. Hold a mirror up to yourself. I've broken my mirror now. Right. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 terrible video games so bad they killed their studios. I hope that you enjoyed that, and let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on my social medias here, over on Blue Sky and Instagram, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0, and you can follow my lovely editor Sai over on her social medias over here. But before I go, I just want to say one thing, my friend. Even though we spoke today about terrible video games that were so bad that they led to a very, very bad situation, I just want to say one thing. We need to, as a human species, need to forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we've made in the past, because like I said at the beginning of this video, we all make mistakes. We are human, we are very, very fallible, but the thing that we need to do is to try not to repeat them, to go forward with the memory of what we did or had done to us so that we can live a better, healthier life and make better choices for ourselves and people around us. Because at the end of the day, that's all I want for you, is to live a healthy and happy life, all right? So treat yourself with that love and care. Learn from the mistakes that you've made in the past. Actually address them. Don't just push them away. Actually address them and learn from them in order to move on, all right? Because trust me, once you get rid of all that baggage, you will live a better life. Trust me. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.